Molweni manene namanene kazi, namkele kile kuin kubo, golvesi slanu Emperor's Palace, umtu wasemonti u Yanga Sigqibo, uzakuzama u kubeta u Ricardo Malajika no kuzuza in chinga ye shlabati ye IBO kudiri le junior bantamweight. If you are interested in that fight, as I've said here, just greeting my friends there in East London, Saturday night on Supersport at Emperor's Palace. Yanga Sigqibo, Showtime as they like to call him, a seasoned junior bantamweight. He's going to challenge Ricardo, the Magic Man Malajika, for the IBO junior bantamweight title. It's an intriguing local super fight, and I'm very interested in it. If you are too, then stick around and let's break it down. Masikazulule umlo. Friday night at Emperor's Palace on Supersport, will the Magic Man Ricardo Malajika continue his win streak and his streak of very fine form as of late and retain his IBO Junior Bantamweight belt against Yanga Sigqibo, or will that East London excellence of all these great fighters that we've seen over the years come from there in the lighter weights be too much, and will the apple cart go off the rails there for Ricardo Malajika? That is the big question. Now, Yanga Sigqibo, 18-2-1 is his record, and he is the more seasoned fighter. He's been around for a while. He's been on the international circuit for quite a while. I've seen many of his fights from ringside, as I did Ricardo Malajika, so it's a fight that I'm very much into. And Yanga Sigqibo, 2 fights ago, he went to Japan, fought the current WBO junior bantamweight world champion, a big star in Japan, Kosei Tanaka. The conventional wisdom, myself included, thought that Tanaka would be too strong and too much and would eventually stop Yanga Sigqibo. But he hung tough, he competed well, he lost on points, but it wasn't a washout. And in defeat, I was quite impressed with what Sigqibo was able to accomplish. In between then and now, he's won a 10-round decision over a tough Namibian Jonas Matthias, and now he's facing Ricardo Malajika. Now, Malajika had a rough start to his professional career. He started with a lot of hype because he had this big amateur pedigree, but he had a sort of a wild, unorthodox style, a much more aggressive style with a lot of switch hitting in between, constantly changing stances. And that gave his opponents chances to get some shots off on him, and he started with a winning streak, but then he came unstuck against Sabelo and Gavignana, who put the pressure on him and sort of mugged him, and he lost that fight on points. And a few fights later, he was also outpointed by Siko Ngotole. So then it looks sort of, yep, the Ricardo Malajika experiment isn't going to work. This is a guy that was very good as an amateur, but is not converting well to the professionals. You know, he went from, I believe it was Anton Gilmore, he went to Fusi Mtolo, and now he's with Manny Fernandez. And then he kind of started pulling things together. He fought a Filipino, Adrian Lerasan, whom I thought was very dangerous, who is one on the road in Thailand coming into a Malajika fight. But Malajika whitewashed him and just wiped him out of the ring and stopped him. And I thought that was quite a good fight. And that landed him his shot at this IBO belt against a solid Argentinian fight, and Kevin Luis Munoz. And he won that fight by a wide margin. He boxed beautifully. He was settled. He let the Argentinian come into him, and his jab was working overtime. He was going with a jab. He dictated the fight from there, and then brought in the second hand and the uppercut and the left hook as the fight wore on. And he scored a very solid win where I fought against Munoz, and then he defended against Marcel Braithwaite, a pretty decent fighter there from England. I believe a former British or Commonwealth champion. I don't know both or either, can't remember anymore. But Marcel Braithwaite, solid fighter, solid guy that comes forward. And Braithwaite didn't have a chance against Malajika. He boxed with concentration, good poise, in control. I thought it was he scored he actually did score a shutout. He won every round, and I thought it was a breakout performance. And now if you look at BoxRec, Malajika is in the top 10 in the world, and he's got something to defend. Whether you rate for IBO title as a world title or not, I tend to go with big four sanctioning bodies. The fact of the matter is Malajika has turned a floundering career where he lost to some of the local fighters here around into a career where he's regarded internationally as a world-class fighter now. So this is a great opportunity for Yanga Sigqibo to reinvigorate his career, because he is a more experienced guy, and he's fought against a better quality of opponents in the sense of a fight with Sigqibo is also a former South African champion, and he's got various international titles. But there's not a Kosei Tanaka on the record of Ricardo Malajika, even though the quality of opposition has gone steadily up. So now, Ricardo Malajika, now that he's settled his style in the orthodox stance, he's boxing off a jab, his more conventional boxing style. He's 13-2, he's got 9 knockouts. I think he's got decent power. He's not a one-and-done knockout puncher, but I think he's got decent power. I think he's got better power than Yanga Sigqibo's got. Although Sigqibo, if you go in without knowing what you're doing or not being careful, like Chris Paulino did many fights ago in the Orient Theatre, and Sigqibo starched him, then you know, he can hurt you. If it was a few fights ago, if it was before the Kevin Luis Munoz and Braithwaite fights happened, I would have said Yanga Sigqibo is too experienced, he's a better talent, he's a better pro, he's just going to hand Ricardo Malajika a boxing lesson. But now other fights happen, and Malajika has lifted his performance, and there is a thing called momentum in boxing. Malajika has got these good wins and the activity, and that boosts a fighter's self-confidence. He's now become a star in his gym, and you know, that you can see the confidence in him when I see him at the weigh-ins and so on. His manager Brian Mitchell always jokes, when a fighter becomes champ, he's got to have fancy sunglasses. Ricardo's got the fancy shades now. Not that that's going to help him against Yanga. Yanga's got a couple of fancy pair of shades as well. But the confidence is there in Malajika. I think his fighter's identity has settled now, that he's more of a boxer, that he uses the jab. But here's the other thing. Now styles make fights. And Ricardo, in his last fights where he looked so good, he had guys coming at him, going for him, coming at him. You know, against Filipino Larasan, at some point he had to go after him. And I think Malajika looks very good when the guy's coming at him and he's dictating behind the jab. And Yanga Sigqibo is a totally different sort of fighter. He's not like Munoz or Braithwaite. He's not going to come at you like that. Malajika likes to be in the center of the ring, work everything from his left jab, and from there on he breaks you apart and maybe he catches you coming in. If Malajika dictates behind his jab, if he's in the center of the ring, if it's a boxing match there, then he's a very, very tough guy to beat. You've got to put Sigqibo under pressure. So what worked for Malajika against those other two is not going to work here against Yanga Sigqibo. He's going to have to turn into the hunter now. He's not going to be able to wait for Yanga to come to him. He's going to have to push Yanga backward and put him under pressure. There's one thing about Yanga Sigqibo, he doesn't like the pressure. I remember years ago in Gqeberha, I saw him on the undercard of Steven Onchinga's world title eliminator against Gerald Paklar. This guy has since been back into South Africa, but that was a different version of Paklar. A very rough and tumble, hard-storming Filipino. And Sigqibo won on points, but it wasn't a good win. He was very uncomfortable there in spots and almost in trouble and buzzed a couple of times. So Malajika is going to have to be aggressive, and what's going to be interesting in this fight is who wins the battle of the jabs. Because if Malajika gets stuck behind Sigqibo's jab, it's going to be a long night. Malajika is going to have to use his jab more aggressively, slipping past Sigqibo's jab, jabbing to the body, jabbing to the top. He's going to have to fight more aggressively, but not go back to his old mistakes where he switches stances, where he falls off balance, where he throws wild shots. He must guard against that. So the question here is, can Malajika change into the aggressor, but in a controlled way, in a concentrated way, not in the rough and tumble, wild swinging, unorthodox way like he did earlier in his career? That's the question. If he can do that, then put intelligent pressure on Yanga Sigqibo, then he can win this fight. But if Sigqibo gets to do his thing, fight his fight, I think Sigqibo in that aspect is somewhat like Zolani Tete. He hasn't got the power of Tete, but like Zolani Tete, he likes to dictate behind his jab, and if that doesn't work out for him, the jab gets taken away, he's put under pressure, then things start sort of falling apart and getting wonky. Guys, ndiqelele quick comments. Ndicinga ukuba ngubani oza kuphumelela, lo mntu uza kuphumelela njani, kutheni. Guys, tell me in the comment section, who do you think wins this fight? Why and how? I'm always interested to know what you guys are thinking. And always remember, kofa I like. Hit that like button. I greatly appreciate that. But I've got to pick a side here, and I've got to say who I think is going to win this. I think there's a thing such as momentum in boxing, as I've said, and I think the momentum is behind Ricardo Malajika now. I think the experience, that experience against Kosei Tanaka is something that can serve Sigqibo well. And I think that Ricardo Malajika is going to have to reset and step back and do different things, get past the jab of Yanga Sigqibo, deal with the speed of Sigqibo. I'm not sure he's got the height and reach. I can't find the stats for that. And I've never seen the two together. I've just seen them separately, so it's hard in my mind to picture. I think Yanga might have a height and reach advantage, but I'm not sure. So if I'm betting that Ricardo Malajika is going to be able to find his groove, and he's going to be able to put Yanga Sigqibo under pressure, and I think he's going to win a much harder fought but closer decision. But I think he's still going to win a decision. So I think Ricardo Malajika for me is probably going to win a 3-pointer or a 2-pointer there in Emperor's Palace and retain his belt. But I'm interested to see what Yanga Sigqibo can do if he can spring with surprise. Perhaps he proves me wrong. That is what I'm thinking, so I'm going for Malajika by unanimous decision. And I'm sure you guys in East London is going to disagree with me, and that's fine. We have to disagree in this game because that's what makes it fun, right? So that's it from me, guys. Please remember to subscribe. Please remember to share. Desi Bonani, Paka Mesani Izandla. Just a little extra before I really go. There is two interesting fights on the undercard. Brandon Tacer fights for a vacant South African junior middleweight title against Junior Makondo. Now, what happens there? Andre Tacer was his dad, sadly deceased now. Used to be a very solid South African super middleweight and Commonwealth champion as well. And Brandon has won various international belts, but now he's going for the traditional thing, the South African title. And can he follow in his dad's footsteps by also being a South African champion? Now, Brandon Tacer has had an up and down thing. You know, he was streaking after the forward war. Then he lost the rematch with a split decision against Rourke Knapp. Then a few fights off. Then he got beaten by Stravante Koopman, and then he came back with a solid win in a war against Darren Rousseau. And what is he going to do against Junior Makondo? Now, Makondo has several stoppage losses on his record, but he's here because in his last fight, he won a 12-round decision for a WBF belt against Jacques Chikubu Muvut from the DRC. And we know Muvut, he's given Stravante Koopman hell, he's given Darren Rousseau hell. He always goes to war. He's a very, very tough nut. And Makondo came through and he won the decision, and now he's up against Brandon Tacer. So can Makondo turn it into a streak? And does Brandon Tacer have too many wars behind him, or is Tacer going to come through? I just think Brandon Tacer has got underrated power. He's a very good body puncher, and whereas Muvut is sort of swarming, Tacer places his shots a little bit better. So I'm going here for Brandon Tacer to get the stoppage win, let's say maybe in 8 rounds or so, and become South African champion. And then we have got an interesting 8-rounder on the undercard in the Bridgerweight division, whether you recognize it or not. I think it's 224 pounds between cruiserweight and heavyweight. It's not recognized here in South Africa, so I think officially it's just seen sort of as a heavyweight bout. But we've got Chris Thompson, the Wolf, who had a nice comeback win against Jean Roux, put himself back in the win column, taking on a Romanian, Alexandru Jur. Now, Jur is an interesting character. He's got 2 wins behind him, so he has a bit of momentum. He beat a 10-0 Japanese fighter in his last fight there in Japan, so he's used to fighting on the road. He's even fought in places like Gabon. But as a cruiserweight, he sort of lost to the big guys. Krzysztof Lodarczyk, the Polish guy, outpointed him. He got stopped by Alexei Pap, and the UK fighter Tommy McCarthy stopped him. And so he's a guy that can be stopped. But if you look at Chris Thompson, he's a southpaw, he's a tricky guy, he's athletic, you know, he's a sportsman, he's got very good feet, nice feet, good feet movement, quick hands, very nice southpaw jab, once again, momentum. Not a power puncher maybe, but decent enough power if you saw the way he dobs Jean Roux. If he catches you with too many and he gains that confidence, he can put the hurt on you. And Jure is not a big heavyweight, neither is Chris Thompson. They're going for this whole bridgerweight thing. And I think Thompson has got his confidence back. If I look at Alexandre Jure, the better footage I could find, Jure is a bit pedestrian. He hasn't got the speed of Chris Thompson. He's got a bit of an overhand right that he uses to good effect, that Chris will have to look out for, because that's something that will definitely try against a southpaw. But more or less, I'm thinking that Chris Thompson is going to win this fight. I don't know if he's going to stop Alexandre Jure. He could possibly do that if he gets comfortable and gains enough confidence. But I'm thinking it's going to be a distance fight, and I think Chris Thompson's going to win a clear points decision there. So that's what's happening on the undercard at Emperor's Palace, or underneath that super fight, South African super fight of Ricardo Malajika and Yanga Sigqibo. And that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching.